William Hickman Ewing, Jr., Captain, U.S. Navy Reserve, retired. I get orders from Bupers saying, we're ordering you to be the CIC officer on the USS Dewey out of Norfolk. And so I called Washington from Vietnam. I said, well, man, I don't have but 7 months left. What, And they said, no, you've been extended an extra year involuntarily. And all Naval Academy officers and all regular ROTC officers were considered USN, regular Navy. Whereas the reserves, they had 3-year obligation. They had on their ID card, it had an expiration date. Ours didn't. And you had to write a letter. Dear Mr. President, I hereby resign my commission effective, active duty commission effective, whatever. So out of the blue, I get my orders for ship on the East Coast. Well, I hadn't even put in a preference card. I put one in before Vietnam in case I didn't get SWIFTs. So basically, I leave Vietnam and I go home for 30 days leave, and I report to the Naval Air Station at Glencoe, Georgia, near Brunswick, Georgia, for 5 months of Combat Information Center and Air Intercept Control School. Good school. I was a lieutenant at that point. I'm in with a lot of ensigns and a lot of aviators, none of whom had had any ship experience, but I not only had ship, but I had swift boats. So the school was pretty easy, but it was a really good school if you're going to be on a ship. So I learned all about anti-air warfare, anti-submarine. I was a qualified air controller. And so my ship, the Dewey, was coming back from Vietnam. It was a East Coast ship, and I flew out, met the Dewey at Pearl Harbor, July of '68, and came back through first officer of the deck. Watch I stood on my own was coming out of the Panama Canal, and we went back to Norfolk. And so on their year turned out good. I didn't like it at the time, but I was going to get out and probably be a teacher and a coach like my father and my mother. Dad taught history. I had majored in history. I started out in engineering. First semester of my sophomore year, I made a B, 4 Ds, and an F. I couldn't understand statics and some of these mechanical courses. They didn't have PE. They didn't have education at Vanderbilt, so I majored in history. And I did okay in history. So I thought, I was going to get out. And so now I end up on this ship. And it was good. We did Caribbean cruises. We went to the North Atlantic, had an operation with the Brits and the Germans and the Canadians, and I was the evaluator in CIC, and good experience. Went to the Med, lots of joint exercises, but at the end of my 5 years, I had 5 years sea duty basically, and so I decided to get out, and I was looking for a coaching job, but I couldn't get a high school job because I didn't have a teacher's certificate. So I actually talked to some colleges about just coaching a college team because I played in college. When I got discharged in Naples, traveled around Europe for a month, came back, it was a guy on my last ship. And this guy was our navigator, Tom O'Brien, and we became friends. And he said, what are you going to do when you get out? I said, man, I think I'm going to get GI Bill, I may get my master's, I may get my teacher's certificate. He said, man, you ought to go to law school. This guy was a lawyer. I said, look, I don't even know any lawyers. My undergraduate grades weren't very good. He said, look, all you got to have is common sense and be able to talk. And you got that. So, I ended up taking the law school admission test at sea in a tropical storm. They'd sent it to the education officer. I hadn't had a test in 5 years. I'm in there trying to take this test, and I thought, man, I'm not doing any good. But anyway, I got accepted at Memphis State Law School, had no money, and I thought, well, I'll try this semester. I walked into the Liberty Bowl Stadium 2 weeks before I was supposed to start law school, and I see a guy that was a Navy guy, ROTC with me at Vanderbilt. Last time I'd seen him, he was in Subic Bay on the ship, And this guy was a real crazy guy, Roger Fish. I mean, he would say it on camera, football player. And I said, man, what are you doing here? He was from Nashville. He said, I'm going to law school. Oh, I'm starting to. He said, no, I've already finished 2 years. I said, you finished 2 years of law school. If you did, I could do it. So I got a house. I was living in a rental house with 3 of my brothers. 2 had been to Vietnam like me. 1 was in the Army Reserve. So we were getting the GI Bill. And I didn't have to stay in the Navy Reserve because I didn't. But I checked in, and they said, man, all you got to do is drill 1 weekend a month, and you'll get a lieutenant with over 4 pay for 4 days. I said, okay. So I got through law school on the GI Bill and the Navy Reserve. And I was going to get out of the reserves. But I had 8 years in there, 5 plus 3, and made lieutenant commander just as I was to get out. And there were people senior to me saying, man, all you got to do is make 20, and you can retire and you can do this. So I ended up staying in, but I never switched to JAG. I was a ship guy, and they had no JAG pay billets in Memphis. So I would do 2 weeks. One time for 3 years I was assigned to the USS Morton, which is a destroyer home porter in Pearl Harbor. So I'd do my 2 weeks in Hawaii. And very therapeutic for me to get underway. Did a couple of times on carriers on the Kennedy. And I'd go on there, what's your background? Navigation ops. Okay, we're going to put you on the CIC watch bill, and you can teach all these Navy midshipmen from the academy celestial navigation, because our navigator, he doesn't know how to do celestial, because he now just reads the satellite. So anyway, I stayed in the reserves 17 more years, made captain, and retired from the Navy